Ayup Woodlanders. The question I often get asked is, how do you measure all your rods? Because you never see a tape measure in the coppice. So to give you an idea, hedging stake, generally 5'6", and if I'm working with a chainsaw and I'm measuring, I do it with my legs. So the stake will be on the ground, I'll put my heel at the back of the stake and I'll walk up 2 paces, and then the back of my heel is the top of the stake. However, if I'm working up or dressing up in reasonably good coppice and I'm getting material out, then the stake, because I'm doing it by hand with the bow saw, I measure it differently. So I'll grab the stake, I'll pull the rod out, and I'll measure, and I'll put it in my hand like that, and I'll measure to the edge of my wrist. So just to the edge of my sleeve, just there, that's where I'll measure to, and I'll work out where that is, slice it off, job done. So that's my 5'6" hedging stick. It's very similar with a beam pole. Now a beam pole in this area tends to be cut at 8 foot. So again, same sort of thing. When I'm dressing up, I'll dress up the rod, work it up, I'll put it in my hand, I'll have my billock in my hand, and same again, I'll have it in the tips of my fingers. I'll measure down to where my billock is in the tip of my fingers. I'll see where that measures to. That's come to about there, and then I add a foot, which I can do roughly by eye. So I'll get to that point, that's where my billock was, and then I'll slice it off at 8 foot. So that gives me an 8 foot beam pole. Now I don't worry too much about getting the millimetre perfect or inches perfect. Hedging stakes are always cut them off anyway. I mean, you don't want to give them a foot short, but if they're an inch or 2 short or an inch or 2 long, that seems to be fine. Same with beam poles, I always make sure they're at least 8 foot long, but they usually are a couple of 3 inches longer. What we'll do in a bit is we'll get the tape measure out and we'll do the test and see whether my measurements come up anywhere near what the tape measure says. So that's 2 of the main ones that I tend to measure. There are other products that get measured in the coppice, but they're the 2 main ones I look for. The other rods, which are rods I use for hazel hurdles, they're not measured at all. As long as they're over 4 foot, I can use them. So that's what they get put in, and I'll dress them off. And the other one that sort of gets measured, but it's just as long as you can get them, is hedge laying binders, which is the ropey bit they put on the top of the hedge. You want them, I think, probably 12 foot plus. Other hedge layers seem to want them 14 foot plus. So it depends what the hedge layer wants. I don't get a lot of binders out of hazel because this isn't nicely in cycle hazel. You need a lot of it, and you need them nice and close together, and you need it regularly cut, and we're not there with this yet. The only other one then you'll see me measure with my feet when I've got the chainsaw is stuff for firewood and charcoal. I tend to cut those at 6 foot lengths, which again is, I just pace it out with my legs. 2 of my paces is about 6 foot. It doesn't have to be absolute millimetre perfect, but it gives me just that instant measurement where I just know, that's about it, nip it off at the end, and that's my particular measurement for charcoal wood or firewood. Now some people have different specs. Some people cut them at 4 foot, some people cut them at 2.4s or 8 foots. It all depends what spec you want, and all I've done in the past is I've just worked out what it is that I've got that doesn't change much, which is my arms and my legs, and use that as my datum. Seems to work for me. Something else I do, handy tip, it's all to do with diameter of the wood as well. So a hedging stake, that's around about 1.5 inches diameter. So my fingers just about go around that at the bottom. That's a nice average. You can have a bit bigger or a bit smaller. This one is a bit smaller, look, my fingers go right round. It's about 1.25 inches at the bottom. That one, I could use that for weaving hazel hurdles, but I think that for me getting a bit on the big side. I look down the rod, think, right, I know where roughly about 8 foot is. I'll dress it up. If it's relatively straight, it becomes a beam pole. If it's not relatively straight, then it might end up as a weaving rod. So I'll look down the rod, I'll see what's available out the rod, dress accordingly, measure accordingly, bob's you. This one, a bit too thin for a beam pole for me. Well, you could use it as a beam pole, but I also use hazel weavers for hurdle making. And this one is just nice. So I'll cut it, I'll trim it right down to the point where it gets a bit too thin. It's about ½ an inch. Nip it off. That then is my weaving rod. This twiddly bit at the end, it'll just end up for scrap. Charcoal, that one. The other thing that's important with hedging stakes and beam poles is to try and dress them up as nicely as you can. Perhaps not a perfect example, that one. You don't really want knobbly bits on hedging stakes, because when they're pushing the pleaches over and you've got knobbly bits sticking out, the pleaches catch. And it drives your average hedge layer to the same. And now for the moment of truth. These are hedge layer stakes. Let's try and get one from top to bottom. So we're looking at 5 foot, 5.5. Now that is fantastic. That's insane. Look at that. I've got to bring you in. 64.5 inches, which is 5 foot, 1, 2, 3, 4.5 inches. Is that right? 1, 2, yeah, sorry. My mistake. It's not 5 foot, 5.5, it's 5 foot, 4.5 inches. That's not bad, is it? I'm 1.5 inches out. Let's go and measure the beam poles. These are ones I've just dressed this morning. So, tell you what, let's go for this one. Not because I think it's longer, because tape measure probably won't fall off it. Right, so we've got 8 foot 3 inches. 2 inches over on the beam poles, 1.5 inches under on the hedging stakes. So I hope that helps answer your questions about how on earth do you measure without a tape measure. Thanks for watching. If you're able to, have a go at measuring with your billock. I'll see you on the next one.